Hey, Lex, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, us too. We got a bunch of questions for you, and we got listeners that are ready to take down some notes and learn a thing or two.
Absolutely. Shoot away.
Hey Lex, it's Tyler. Appreciate you taking time. We know you're very busy. We always like to start with your softball story and what that was like growing up for you. And we've had some people talk about being starting with t-ball or their dad was their coach. Like, it's always different. Some of it was slow pitch for some people, just with the area you lived in. So, what was yours like growing up, and what was softball like in the area?
Yeah, definitely. So I was raised, I started playing, with a Bam Bam bat in North Carolina and somehow ended up in T-ball. Started living in Lexington, Kentucky. And my dad was the coach. I actually started out in baseball. And I wasn't in it for too long, but then I ended up transferring over into softball. Played in a little bit of rec ball, maybe for a year. Realized that I wanted to play a little bit higher competition, so I started playing travel ball at a very very young age, and then kind of just took off from there. And I mean, I've been playing probably since 6, 7 years old, but softball truly about 8 years old is where I was at.
I love that you said the Bam Bam bat
That
because
was it, yeah.
with both of my kids, my daughter being the oldest, from the minute she could pick up a Bam Bam bat, that's what we called it, and I think that's cute. I love that. Uh,
Yeah.
but I wanted to know for your college choice, why did you choose to go to South Carolina at first, and then what made you transfer? And we got some more questions about college as well, but
Yeah.
I want to hear about that experience, through the recruiting process and what that was like, and what made that the school, and why you eventually transferred.
Yeah. So I went on my first visit to the University of Tennessee in 8th grade. Um, I mean,
Mm.
so early. I was at 13 years old at the time, and then all of a sudden, started taking more and more visits. Really was in the recruiting world. Began recruited very heavily, and then at 14 years old, I went on my first visit to the University of South Carolina freshman year, and absolutely just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the campus. Fell in love with Calvin Beeman at the time, and just I thought that was completely home. It was the first offer that was on the plate for me. It was a full ride, and any kid at 14 years old hearing that your school's going to be paid for, and
Right.
didn't really know my values at the time. I didn't know what I wanted to major at the time. All I saw was a big chunk of cash. School was going to be paid for, and I was going to play at the SEC level. First 2 years were great. I kind of faced a couple problems, just family issues wise, a lot of personal problems more on my part than anything. I wasn't growing into the woman I wanted to be with my faith, and if anything, I was kind of going the other direction. So, my biggest thing I want to point out is a lot of people transfer because of playing time. That was not my case. I played a good amount for a freshman and a sophomore, and it really came down to my personal growth is why I transferred. I kind of needed a new start. I went through a really bad, kind of like a death of the family where my parents got divorced my freshman year in college, and it was really hard on me. I really value family for myself, and hit hard. And I think at the end of the day, I wanted to keep growing in my faith and keep growing as a person. It just wasn't with me, and it wasn't there at South Carolina. If anything, it was just more for me and not really my softball career at the end of the day.
Now, let me jump in real quick. How much did those things off the field weigh on you while you were playing, or was playing your escape?
100%. So it weighed on me tremendously. School was never a problem for me. I've always been kind of a 4.0 student. But when it came to my support system, that is everything to me. And when I was 8 hours away, because I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, being 8 hours away from home and, not really having a support system behind me and being a true 18-year-old, a true freshman, I didn't really have a support system at the time. And that weighed on me tremendously at the end of the day. And I think and to be honest, I think I did to myself a lot. As an 18-year-old, I didn't really know how to handle myself. I didn't really face a lot of failure growing up. And so when it came down to failure within a personal thing, I didn't know how to deal with it. So I kind of took myself out, making softball more of a nightmare than my escape at the end of the day. But I can truly say, at 18-year-old, I would be the one pointing the finger. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think I took myself out of it just because at 18 years old, I didn't know how to deal with it. And I took myself out of it. I didn't want to bring anyone else down. So I kind of separated myself from not the team, but more separating myself from really it all, anything that I felt like I could bring down. And some may say that's selfish. Some may say, that's probably the best thing to do. But at the end of the day, I needed to do what was best for me because your 4 years at college is going to go by so fast. And I realized that. And so when my 2 years were up at South Carolina, I knew that I wasn't becoming who I wanted to be, wasn't, the player that I potentially could really be. And so that's really why I left. And so, yeah.
Well, I'm curious about this because you're not the first person that said 8th grade was when they started committing, which, we have some people that are just like, hey, that's too early. Or you got some people that say, hey, it was the best thing that could ever happen to me. So for the 8th graders listening now thinking, oh crap, I'm already too late. What do you say to that? I mean, is there something where it's too early, or is there a just individual basis? Does it change for different people?
I know. In my opinion, I think 14 is way too early. I think 8th grade is way too early. These girls don't even know what they're going to eat for dinner at night. These girls don't even know what they're going to do tomorrow. How in the world are they going to make decisions that are going to be impacting them for the rest of their life? I think at 14 years old, I didn't know what I truly valued. I didn't know how deep I was into who I really wanted to be or what I wanted to do. I have a 16-year-old sister right now. Her name's Riley. She's committed to Mississippi State and is a phenomenal player and just a phenomenal woman in general. And, I know she made her decision pretty early, but at the end of the day, my advice was to her was, are you going to be happy at a school that you may not play at? Are you going to be happy at a school that at the end of the day you get injured and you can't play? At the end of the day, are you looking at the shiny temporary things? Or are you looking at the material things that will last a lifetime, such as your relationships with the coaches and the players, just your relationships and how they're going to help mold you to the aftermath after softball? And a lot of kids at that age don't look at that. They look at the shiny new uniforms, brand new stadiums and everything. You can have all that, but at the end of the day, you can be surrounded by so many people, but still feel so alone. And I just think my biggest advice to any 8th grader listening is you have time and don't rush, because there's a home for every single one of you guys, no matter what division it is. Your 4 years matter. And I think at the end of the day, 4 years is going to impact the rest of your life and how you end loving the game. And if you don't end loving the game, it's going to be real hard for you to keep plugging back into it.
I mean, there's two schools of thought, right? You commit it, the pressure's off, but then you still got to live up to those expectations of the player you thought you were going to be. Number two, you commit. Then now there's a coaching change. Well, now maybe we don't have a roster spot for you. I mean, all these crazy variables. It's definitely a scary world to jump into. And it's also scary to sit and wait because they can move right on from you and be like, oh, well, if you'd have committed, you'd have been all right, but you didn't live up to the hype. You know what I mean?
Totally. I know when my coach, when Coach Bev Smith was recruiting me, and when I said, all right, I'm going to verbally commit to you, she said, this is like dating. I'm not going to cheat on you and you're not going to cheat on me. I said, yes, ma'am, that's correct. But then at the end of the day, I was also listening. I was like, but the thing is, I didn't really give anyone else an option. I really think there was probably a better home for me out there. But, you kind of just jump the gun when something's on the table that you probably won't get anywhere else. I think you should invest in a school that truly wants you and doesn't treat you as an option.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, just listening to, I had a similar situation with a divorce in the family, and it actually happened at my 9th grade, my freshman year of high school.
Right.
And that was really difficult for me just to be a student and an athlete. And I can imagine at the college level. And you had talked about, going through those struggles at the time, and eventually finding your spot at Jacksonville State. What was something, one of the biggest lessons that maybe you learned while you were, it could have been at either college really, that you learned that really changed the way that you played, whether it be mentally or fundamentally?
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned that sometimes the grass isn't greener on the other side. I think you truly make what you want your career to be like. I know at some point I was like, you know what? I did all the hard work. It should be coming now. My success should be easy.
Right.
But at that, at that point, you have to realize that you determine how your career will end, and you will determine how much success you will get, because you can only control your attitude and effort. And if you're not getting results that you want, you better fight, because there's always someone ready to take your spot, and always someone ready, to be better than you. And the way I started playing my game junior and senior year was, I can't really say it on camera, but was don't care, don't care what other people think for you. Play your own game. And I know for me, for sure, I put so much pressure on myself to be a people pleaser. I'm a complete giver. I want to meet everyone's expectations, but at the end of the day, I wasn't meeting my expectations. And instead, I was investing in everyone else's thoughts instead of being truly happy in why I play this game and going back to my roots. And that was because I love the game. It created and molded me into who the woman I was becoming. And I think that's where I was. Like, I had to go in and realize I determine what I want to do. So that's kind of where I was at with my last 2 years of playing ball.
Now, you say you're a giver, a complete giver.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that tie into being a catcher? Because there's a certain relationship that's developed, and my son's a catcher, and I've always told him that you got the entire team looking in at you. It's your body language that everybody's going to look at. The pitcher in the circle or on the bump, they carry it, but the catcher, ultimately, when he's shrugging his shoulders and the umpire's behind him, you're giving a piece of yourself when it's 90 degrees, 100 degrees, doubleheader, tripleheader, tournament, 5 games in 3 days, whatever it is. You're giving a piece of yourself every time you get back there.
No, you're a giver.
What was that like for you? Did that mentality that you say and the person you are feed into the position that you played?
Oh, for sure. I think it takes a special breed to be a catcher. As you know, catchers are my favorite. So the position of a catcher is just a complete giving position. You do that position knowing that you're not going to get any recognition, knowing that you're doing the dirty work. You're playing dodgeball half the game. If you don't catch the ball catches you. And I think it completely has molded me into who I am outside the field. Like, there's not a moment where I don't think, all right, how can I serve you more than what's going to happen to me? And sometimes that hurts you, sometimes it doesn't in this game of college softball. Like, it's pretty brutal. You have girls out here that, it's nails and blood around here. And there's a point with being a catcher. Of course you have that grit and the dominance part of it, but at the same time, you'll give your jersey off your back for someone that truly needs it on that field. So, yeah, I definitely think being a catcher has impacted the way I am on and off the field.
Now, how did you stay mentally present behind the plate? You got sweat in your eyes, dirt in your eyes, foul balls, breaking balls, players, at the plate, umpire leaning on your back. How did you stay mentally into the game? What advice would you give young catchers out there that are listening to this?
My advice to catchers is to never take one pitch off. I think you have to be mentally strong, but you have to look at the big picture. I think for catchers, it can get really, really gruesome. It can get really fast for some, but take your time. I like to tell my catchers that you control time and that the game is waiting on you. And, if the game gets too fast, you have the superpower of calling timeout. There's, people are waiting on you. And I think some catchers just kind of just get in the rotation, the routine of just catch, throw back, and not truly understanding what their role is. I think mentally you need to know what your role is and show up every single pitch and don't take one off.
I don't think it's any mistake or there's not really much, I don't know, too much guessing involved when it comes to looking at coaches. We'll just take the major leagues, for example. Yeah. So many coaches and good coaches, they were catchers, and you became a coach. So I want to see, when did that all happen for you? But the relation to coaches and catchers, as a player, you're seeing the game, like you said, never take a pitch off.
Never.
I mean,
definitely.
talk about that a little bit and how that got you into being a coach.
Right. So, as a catcher and, being someone that I feel like catchers are ignored. And I thought, I've been given this platform to start giving back to these catchers. I'm not so much as a coach, at the college level, but I am a coach when it comes to being a catching instructor. And I am trying to give back to girls that deserve the attention that I never received. I got attention, and I'm so blessed that I can say that I got a coach here at JSU and even at USC that gave me attention and to help me grow into my position. But anything before that, it was just my dad and I. And honestly, I can say that I taught myself how to catch. And as a coach, not only has this helped me give back and, be an instructor and show what college coaches are looking for in catchers, but it's helped me build a mentality within the whole team. I think a catcher can really build a culture and can really, determine who's driving that bus. And I can say as a coach as well that I am building culture and I'm building them outside of the game. I'm having them learn that they have a voice. I'm helping them learn how to talk to adults and how to talk to umpires, and that transitions into how to talk to people at, like a waitress or, I'm really trying to not only teach the game of softball, but how to teach them to be better adults and how to be better overall women. That's my overall goal as a coach and an instructor.
Now, I love it. Honestly, I love that. I mean, you got to empower the youth. Honestly, I mean, I don't think it's hard for good catchers to be motivated. Honestly, and for you to build culture around it is fantastic. I think vice versa, the pitcher will feed back off of that. The team will feed back off of that energy. For you, what was the hardest part that you had to transition to into coaching? I mean, not all players, you can see stuff, but maybe the way you explain it, a kid doesn't understand it or whatever. But what was the hardest part jumping from player to coach?
That's an easy one. The hardest part about going from a player to a coach is realizing that not every player had the same grit as you. It's tough being a D1 athlete. It takes a lot of sacrifices, and you have to realize there's only 1% to 2% that make it even to that level. And so when you're working with girls on a daily basis that probably will never even have the chance, and the chances are against them that are playing D1, but you're having to kind of install grit. I never knew that, as me growing up, that you had to teach grit and, kind of ask for it. And I know me growing up, I didn't have to ask for it. I just naturally had it. And as a coach, I have to, I guess, ask for my players to give me more, have a little bit more stronger of a work ethic. It kind of just blows my mind that I even have to have those conversations of, hey, where's the effort? What's going on here? And realizing that there's one thing that really separates a coach, and that is a coach that can actually teach the game, and a coach that, can be an outstanding player at one point and just kind of expect their kids to do the same thing and not really teach. But a great coach knows how to teach the game, not a great coach that had a great playing career. And I think that's the difference. You can have All-Americans all you want coaching, but if they don't know how to teach the game, they're not truly making the impact. Only their stats made that impact. And I think that was my biggest thing, was truly learning how to stoop down to how to talk to an 8-year-old about how to hit or catch a ball. That was probably my difficult thing. And just realizing that not all of them have the grit that we kind of already had installed inside of us.
What's one thing that you do messaging wise from 8 to 18? What's one thing you do in that as a coach?
Messaging wise is like, what do you mean by that?
As in, like, how do you say things differently, or is it the same no matter what? I mean, like, the different ways to motivate an 8-year-old as opposed to, take me, for example. I've coached from 4 years all the way up through, showcase, high school, travel, all that. And now I'm back to coaching 7 and 8-year-olds again. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of relearning what it's like to talk to younger kids that way, and explain things maybe a little more simpler.
Oh yeah, my message is always different. I do clinics all around the nation, and I have a beginners and advanced. I never mix the two because I cannot talk to an 8-year-old the same way I talk to a 14-year-old. I think with 8 years old, that I come down to talking to them. Like I use analogies that involve cookies. I use analogies that involve bus drivers going on field trips. And then with my 14-year-olds, I use analogies on real life, speaking in a speech class in college. Like I use analogies that are completely separate. But the thing is, I'm a little bit harder on my older girls. At a young age, I'm trying to install confidence. With the older age, I'm trying to install maturity and for them to kind of grow up into being a catcher at the college level. You can't teach it. I mean, you can install good roots for an eight-year-old, but you really have to water the roots when it comes to your older girls.
Now, can you tell for our listeners who don't follow you online as of yet, and don't know about what you offer when it comes to your clinics and your online training and things like that? Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing over there with Lex Hull catching, and what you're offering out there to just the everyday catcher out there?
Right. So about 2 months ago, I was on the phone with my mom, and I was like, man, like I would just absolutely love to just kind of just go around and just teach the game. And I was like, you know what? I've had so much interest, and then softball world. I'm telling you, softball world is just so small, and having teammates all the way in Colorado and California, and I just have so many connections. I just have been blessed with just with the game of softball and playing in it. That I was like, I'm just ignoring the platform that I could truly have. And so about 2 months ago, I released my business called LH Catching, where I make it a mission to travel around the nation and do about 3-hour clinics with beginners and advanced, and just teach the game of softball with catching, but also teaching the things that people don't talk about in catching. So how to communicate, how to talk to your pitchers, what to say to your umpires. I really teach them the mature way to talk outside of softball. I talk about recruiting. I talk about the mental game seminar. I go out and I share my story. And I like my mom. She always told me, Lex, use your mess as your message. And I've done that since, I've always kept it real. And even if you follow LH Catching on Facebook, I post real stuff. I'm never going to steer someone wrong and just BS them because you just set them up for disappointment. I talk about the downfalls that I've had in my recruiting world, or the downfalls I had in my college career. I talk about, relationships such as, the downfalls I've had with me and my father at times during the game. Like I talk about real stuff because people just don't want to talk about it. It's the most unspoken thought we all have. And, that's what LH Catching is all about. I make it my mission to really just give back to these catchers, but to talk about the real stuff.
As a parent, as a coach, as a former player, I was a center fielder, so I didn't have the umpire at my back. And you had mentioned a couple of times about how to talk to an umpire. And as a baseball player and as a coach, umpires are not our favorite things, but for someone that had to sit right in front of an umpire the entire time and basically, sell pitches, what are some of the tips you give to catchers about how they communicate with umpires?
Right. So with umpires, it's a very ignored position. Everyone already has it kind of set that they're the bad guys. And I like to say, who else is very ignored? Us catchers. And I was like, you need to bond about it. It's like going to the cafeteria and the ignored kids, they sit together. And it's like, we are those ignored kids. I said, you need a bond. And that's why I tell them, I was like, you are building a relationship with them and where they trust you. And I always tell them, these tips that probably would include is introduce yourself. They're a human being. Before your first game, they've probably already called 4 games and it's 100 degrees outside. Take time to know that they're a human being and treat them as a human being. And secondly is, when you're talking to them about a call that you may not agree with, you don't let them know that you don't agree with that. You never turn your back fully to the field. You always keep your talks between him and you discreet. You always just put your hand over your glove. Don't let any, notion that you're even having a discussion with them. And thirdly, I would say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Instead of saying, where was that, Blue? You say, hey, Blue, how can we get that a strike? It's the same thing, but it's, I respect your strike zone, but what are your thoughts on how we can bring that in? And I think another thing is just taking time to say thank you. and taking time to just kind of learn about him, because he makes the calls. And if he's on your side defensively, he's probably going to help you offensively too. And, he's been given that ball 2 balls out, or that strike 2 balls out, but when you're hitting, he may not get that. It's just,
Right.
I feel like umpires are such a crucial part of the game that we need to make it a priority to really, I guess, grow that relationship with the umpire. It's so important. I can't express it enough.
Excellent. I love that.
Now, one thing that I want to ask, that I think this is probably one of the most valuable things in the game, and I think it's probably the one thing we all miss when we're done playing it, is culture. How important is that on a team, in a program, and how do you develop that in a 3-hour clinic a little bit? I mean, if you can just speak a little bit about the first part of it, but also how do you incorporate that in a 3-hour clinic? Because I really think that can be developed very quickly in the right way.
No, I definitely agree. I think culture is unbelievably important when it comes to a team. Culture is the roots of a team. And if you do not have the roots completely set in a team, it's going to be very hard to grow. Like I use the analogy, always, water your roots. And the thing is, a culture has been set by a team that was probably there a long, long time ago before you. And and I also think that culture can be added on. I think there's some cultures that have been nothing but negative for a team, and it shows, because a negative culture can bring awful results. Even you can have the most talent in the world, but if you don't have chemistry and culture, there's no roots to be growing from. And so when it comes to my clinics, I set my standards very, very far ahead by sending emails. And I preach to these girls before they even show up. I need a good attitude and effort. I don't want you to show up with your arms crossed, making it seem like your parents are just making you be here and you don't want to be here. And I've really made it known in my clinics. I said, if you're going to bring negative energy, I will dismiss you. Because the thing is, it takes 1 to 2 people to be vampires on a team, and it can completely suck a team dry. And you have to dismiss those people, even if they're one of the best athletically on that field. You don't deal with it. And I think when it comes to culture, it comes to standards. And if you are lowering your standards, you're lowering your culture, and the possibilities are just, and the threats that you take with your team, it's like there's no ifs about it. If you're not going to put the team first, then turn around. And that's what I've always been raised on. And it might come back to just being a catcher, but as the 3 hours that I'm given with the team, the culture that I bring is big energy. Because I had one girl in my last clinic in Tennessee say, big energy brings bigger results. And it was so true, because one of my drills is diving, and in those diving plays, those game winners. And when they were loud, we just had more and more people just getting those catches. And I was like, wow, like when we sync up, we're unbeatable. Even if you have average talent, when you're synced up, have culture, and have high standards, and that your teammates are holding you accountable, not just your coaches, that's when you're going to get those wins and those big moments for yourself.
Now, having never caught a single game in my life, now I have a son. My son's actually learning how to catch from Tyler's son. He's getting lessons from him. I realize now, just being down and squatting down as a coach, is as much as I do during a practice or a lesson, that it takes a lot of work, a lot of muscle, and you guys must be the strongest people in the field. And I'm just curious, as a player and also as a coach now, what are some of the things you did to keep your core and your legs so darn healthy and strong?
I think it came down to, I didn't really have the best flexibility, but it came down to stretching. I was lucky enough to have great strength and conditioning coaches that made me stretch, and really took recognition in my position that I'm gonna need something a little bit more different than those other positions. I think it came down to how I was training. I was training specifically made for my body and for my position. I started at a very young age when it came to lifting. And, as soon as 13, 14 year, came around, I started lifting pretty heavy. And I think it really just came down to recovery. Take time to, take care of your body after games. Go to treatment. We have mandatory treatment here at JSU all the time, and I'm so glad we had it, because if it wasn't mandatory, I could always use those, a couple hours more of sleep before class. But the thing is, mandatory treatment gave me the opportunity to catch over 400 innings my senior year, plus probably scrimmages during practices and bullpens and everything. I really, though, my body hurts. I'm not gonna lie. I think my hips are at the age of maybe an 80-year-old at this moment. But I can honestly say my knees don't hurt that bad. My arm, it's not too bad, because I took care of myself and I really made stretching a priority. And that's what I teach my girls as well. Start at a young age, learn how to take proper care of your body, and take it serious.
Now, one thing I want to ask, and I think as catchers get ingrained to it a little bit, they see value maybe in it as they get older. But how do you get a catcher on board to catch in bullpens and building and understanding how important they are? Because that is like your batting practice, that is your infield practice, that is your fly balls, but not every kid sees it that way. So how do you get that mindset built in a young athlete?
Well, I can definitely tell you that, even as a freshman and a sophomore in college, I hated bullpens. I just thought I was just a dummy there to catch a ball. But until I started really maturing, and I didn't have no one telling me this, bullpens is your school. That is where you go and get your work in. Bullpens is where you start working on those reps on something you can be better at, because you don't really get that much attention during practice. But bullpens is where you can truly grow as a catcher. And not only can you grow with your mechanics wise, but you can grow with your pitcher and start really understanding her spin and understanding how she works mentally. It is your time to observe and to learn and to really gain a great relationship with your pitcher, because I truly think with a pitcher, you're her best pitching coach. You see everything. Literally, it's coming at your face. And you can talk to her about spin. You can talk about her body language, but you can also start judging on how to move with the pitch. Bullpens is the time for where you really grow as a catcher. And I don't know, I truly think bullpen is school, and you better do your homework, because once you get out on that field, there's no time for adjustments. And, like, you either start catching a new pitcher right during the game, it's nerve-wracking. You don't know what this pitcher is made of. You don't know what she throws. But then in the bullpen, it gives you time to start getting confidence in your ability to catch that pitcher.
No, you had talked about a lot of things today, from ups. You've talked about some struggles you've had. And you may have already given a part of this answer already, because, a lot of adversity you went through while you were playing in college. But what would you say something that you've learned from the sport that you use in your everyday life? Not just in coaching, but just your everyday life.
That's a hard one, just because, I don't live by the saying, softball is who you are. I think softball has definitely molded me and helped me. But something that I use every single day is probably just discipline, accountability. I think giving someone the attention that they deserve by looking them in the eyes, with your shoulders back, not crossing your arms. I think, as well as, I think just holding holding them accountable of just discipline. Hey,
we'll fix
I have a puppy. His name's Claire. This is like, buddy.
Hey.
But I would definitely say with just softball, it's just, I think, just molded me into the person I am. Here, buddy.
He's been really good for 34. I mean, about that.
Yeah, if you're not watching us live on Facebook or Twitter, you better hop on those platforms so you can watch us live.
Yeah, for the dog. But I've put him outside. But anyways, I really just think with softball, it has completely just molded me and just to being just a better me. I think just showing up when I talk to adults, when I even when I'm going in at my job, it's, how I am holding myself to the expectations of, what the task is at hand. I'm very team oriented. I think I'm very responsible. I show up, I do my work, and I do what's expected. So I definitely think that's where it all comes from. But I don't know. I think it's everything. Literally everything in life I do is because softball is completely disciplined me.
Well, accountability for one thing, and just your work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. I don't care if you never play softball, or for those listening, if you never play a sport ever again, when you become an adult and you are in the workforce, accountability and work ethic is huge. And on top of that, what you were talking about with the way that you talk to umpires, if you're not in sales, you absolutely should be, because that's amazing. Because your positioning of questions, that is huge, and that is a skill that not even just for sales, just as an adult, the way you word a question really determines where your conversation is going.
Right. Oh, completely. I mean, it's everything. I've learned that really big, and just the adult world. It's not what you say; it's how you say and how you talk to someone. I always teach my girls. I say, when you're talking to a pitcher, you have to talk to every single one of them differently. Like, I'm not going to look at one pitcher and be like, "Yo, get together," but then I have to talk to my other pitcher like, "Hey, you're okay." Just knowing and understanding and identifying who you're talking to is going to be huge. And just, I think, taking the time to understand who you are talking to, and just realizing, I think one of the best things about someone is taking time to learn their story, because a story tells everything on who they are and why they are the way they are.
Excellent. Love it.
I love it. I love it. We all have a story, and the more you know it, I think the better relationship you build with people.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you.
We've jumped around a little bit and all of this, but before we wind down here with a few more questions, were there any topics maybe that we haven't brought up yet that maybe you just wanted to, you've been seeing this on social media, you've been hearing this in the news, or you've been seeing this online? Are there any topics that you just wanted to, talk about and throw out there that you think are important?
Man, let me think. There's nothing really that really comes to my mind at the moment, but all I gotta say is, for these catchers, don't take it lightly. I think it really takes a special person to become a catcher, and I think not only do you I just want people to realize that there's so much more after softball, and I know so many girls want to just look at the pro life, and they are playing professional ball, and I think people need to stop looking at, oh, I just want to be professional ball. Sorry. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's all right.
So I think just playing professional ball and people are majoring in integrated studies. I want girls to just realize that there's so much more outside of the game, and that if you want to go in and major in integrated studies, there's nothing wrong with it. But the thing is, you need to go in with a plan. And I think a lot of teams and a lot of girls, travel ball teams, push for their players just to go somewhere that has money. Unless you do your research and you truly look at a program that has your values and has your education wants, then that's the school that you need to go to. Stop putting yourself in thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands in debt just to be part of the roster and have a jersey. And I think that's my biggest advice to anyone. And I see it all the time, is girls are committing to schools that give them 25%, don't have their major, but yet it's their dream school. There's something wrong with that, because at the end of the day, they're debt, they're not getting their major, and that's something that I wish I would have done. I never went in debt, but I never really truly got to do the major I wanted to, because I picked a major at 14 years old because it was going to give me the most money. And I didn't know what I wanted. But the thing is, now that I'm out, I'm like, oh, I wish I could totally just go be a psychologist major, and, start working towards something in the medical field. But I am a business major, not going to complain. But that's probably my biggest thing is to girls, stop looking at the professional life, start being where your feet are, and major in something that you want to do in the long run, and not just going thousands and thousands of dollars in debt just for a jersey spot.
For a person who didn't know what to say there, I couldn't have asked for a better answer. That was fantastic. I think many girls and guys need to hear that at this point, at that point in their life in the high school realm, and eighth grade. For those those are looking to jump into getting recruited in 8th grade. So, but that was excellent. I really appreciate that answer. The one question we like to ask, and you may have just answered this with that last bit of information. If you could tell your younger self, if you go back and talk to yourself right now, let's say your 8th grade self or 9th grade self, what would you tell yourself?
That's such a tough one. I would tell myself so many things. I really think for me, I got lost in trying just to please everyone in this game. And I really wish I just stayed to the roots of just enjoying the game. I think at times I let the game kind of ruin me. I think I let the game kind of bring out the ugliest sides of me and making this a job, but I never truly remembered why I played. And I try to ask myself, and I want girls to ask themselves, why do you play? And some will say, because my parents want me to. Some will say, because they'll pay for my school. But if you're not saying because I love it, there needs to be maybe a little bit of self-reflecting there. And I think that's probably my biggest answer for you is if I could definitely just look at myself and just remember why I played the game, I think I would have probably enjoyed my college career a little bit more. But my biggest thing, and I want to add on top of that real quick, is don't let your family relationships and your relationships with your friends and everything just be around softball. Have balance in your life. I wish I would have been able to do a lot more when I was younger, but because it interfered with softball or interfered with the risk of me getting hurt for a tournament or something, I never got to do. I really felt like I kind of had a little bit of my childhood taken away because I was so dedicated to just the big dream. Instead, I didn't have balance in my life, and all I knew was a small little circle, a little bubble that I lived in, and that was the softball world. And now that I'm done with my career, I'm like, holy cow, look what's around me, And I think that's just the biggest thing is I wish I would have had a little bit more balance in my life, and I wish I wouldn't have let a lot of my relationships just be around the game of softball.
I love it. That's great advice for your younger self and for many younger listeners to this. Now, spinning off of that a little bit, what would be the best piece of advice that you could give parents out there or other coaches? Maybe coaches that are just getting started, that dad out there that's not really sure where to start with their daughter in the backyard, who doesn't make confidence in what they know, or is it going to translate into softball? What would be that advice you'd give them?
My biggest advice to parents is to let your kid play the game. I think a lot of parents can take the enjoyment out of the game. I think a lot of parents can set standards that are perfection. And I think my biggest advice with this one is let your kid fail. I think if you don't let your kid fail at an early age, she's going to have a really, really hard time in the long run just with life in general. You see these kids that don't know how to accept failure, but then you have these kids that are insecure, and you have these kids that kind of look at themselves poorly now. And I really think it comes down to the way they're at home. And my biggest advice to parents, even at my clinics, is the way you talk to your daughter is the way they're going to talk to themselves. If you're super hard on them, if you are, you talk down to them, they're going to talk to themselves like that in the long run, and they're going to talk to their teammates like that. And I feel like just let your kid play and stay in your own lane at some point. And when it's time to step back and stop trying to dictate literally everything about the game. Because at some point, these kids do have to learn on their own.
Excellent advice. Love it. Love it. Lex, what would be some of your goals in the next 3 to 5 years?
Ooh, I have quite a few, actually. Well, my number one is to graduate my master's this year. I'm almost done, so I'll be graduating in December. So definitely get my master's, finish up my education. I'm really thinking about going to get my doctorate, but I'm praying about that one. I'm not sure about that one just yet. But my other goal is I want to, in the next few years, I want to be in all 50 states, and I want to be able to do a clinic in all 50 states. That would be really cool. And then my last one, I had 3. I feel like my last one would be just to kind of start life off. I want to be fully independent, which I sort of am right now with my parents, but I want to be fully independent and kind of be living the adult life. But like I'm doing it fully by myself and making fully big girl decisions by myself. But I'm 22 and I got a lot to learn. There's nothing I can't say that I know already. But I don't know. I think just keep growing and just taking day by day as you realize and all the crazy and unfortunate things that's happened the last few days. I think just taking each day at a time. You can have goals, but I just want to grow every single day. That's the whole part.
I love it. I love it. This has always been a good question for us in a way because it's always kind of our podcast is about connecting people to good information, good stories. Um, who would be somebody that you would recommend for Going Yard podcast to reach out to, whether it's a coach out there who impacted your life or whoever that you may have met along your journey that could tell that has a great story that you think other people should know about?
Two people come to my mind. One of my best friends, her name's Shelby McCombs. She, sorry, roommate's home. Probably my biggest one would probably be Shelby McCombs. She was an All-American at Ohio State, phenomenal pitcher, and she just has an unbelievable story. She actually never, and I don't want to tell her story for her, but little recap, she skipped her senior year of high school season, jumped into the University of Louisville, ended up transferring out, played Ohio State, went through a lot of, mental adversities. She is a phenomenal woman. I talk to her every single day, and I think she'd be a great one. Another one that comes to my mind is Tina Whitlock. She just a phenomenal coaching career everywhere that she's went, but I met her at the University of South Carolina as a volunteer coach, and she is just a prayer warrior that has completely helped me with my faith and has held me accountable. And she's actually currently starting to work into the MLB side of things, and she is a great lady, and I think she would just be an absolute asset to your podcast.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Love it. This has been fun. Where can people follow along on your journey online, whether it be, Instagram, Twitter, your website,
Right.
if you got YouTube or something for drill videos, whatever you got, where can people find out what you're doing, those 50 states that, that you're going to be traveling to over the next couple of years? How can they get all that information from you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Facebook. Facebook is usually where I'm at. You can follow me at LH Catching on Facebook. I also have Instagram. It's LH Catching 44 because 44 is my favorite number and what I was my whole life. And then I have Twitter. It's Lex Hull. Instagram, personal accounts at Lex Hull. I'm very vulnerable with my stuff. I put myself out there for the world to see, and I'm just me with everything. I'm very real. So I would love to, if anyone ever has any questions that's been watching this, feel more than welcome to reach out to me or anything. If it's about softball, school, recruiting, anything, I'm here. So I want people to use me as a resource.
That's excellent. And, we just missed you in Pennsylvania. It looks like you were just up.
Yeah. Shamokin.
Yeah, Shamokin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next time you're in town, let us know. We'll try to.
Well, I'm in Maryland. We can add that one to your
we can add Maryland too. We're right on the border.
I mean, no, when I was in Shamokin, I've never seen coal piles as big as mountains. So that was a new one for me. But people up there, surprisingly, it was fairly really warm up there. So I was ready to be stepping in knee deep with snow, but
you must have called us on a good day.
I sure did.
It's not. It's the weather up here is just crazy.
That's the Mid-Atlantic in winter for you. Like it goes from 60 to 20 degrees and snow in the matter of 2 days.
Yeah.
Hey,
really.
you guys can keep the snow. I don't want it down here in the south.
I bet. Well, Lex, we got one more question for you. This is one of our favorite questions because we feel that music tells a lot about a person, and especially in a situation where, let's just say you have a bat in the 2020 Olympics.
Yeah.
What song would you use as your walk-up song to the plate?
My go-to is "God's Gonna Cut You Down" by Johnny Cash.
That's excellent. And why that song?
Awesome song.
Why that song out of all songs?
Man, I've always been a kind of an old soul, but when I heard that song, I just had this fire light up in me. I think it just comes back to you better respect this game or it's gonna karma is a real thing in softball, and I think if you just put your good foot forward with it and have a little bit of grit and a little bit of hey, I'm here, what's going on, and I'm ready to show out. I don't know, that song just brought a presence that it fired me up, and I was ready to show people who I am.
That's excellent. I love it. Well, Lex, we really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy person.